Okay.
First, let me confirm that everybody who is on so far can hear me, and that you know that you are now being recorded. Members, would you one by one just state your name for the record so that we can establish the quorum? I'm Peter Halley. That's one.
Harry Bella here.
2,
Peter Kahn.
3,
Kathy Baird.
4,
Bill Sherman.
5. Anybody else? There is a quorum present. We have our speaker today is going to be Patrick Reed, who is the town's new transportation planner, and he is on. So this meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, and both all the extensions and legislative extensions due to the continuing state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. My personal disclosure, I'm currently testing positive for that virus, so I'm very, very glad we were able to do this meeting remotely, and that I'm able to attend without threatening anybody, at least not threatening them with COVID. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to not suspend, but to consider carefully having public meetings, and we are required under the governor's order and the suspension of the open meeting law to have all meetings necessary by Zoom with complete public participation. The order, the governor's order, you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, and it allows us and other public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded, so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers is convening this video conference using the town's Zoom app. And the meeting was posted on the town's website in accordance with the law identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording of this meeting. Any supporting materials, such as the minutes that have been provided by members of the body, are available on the town's website, unless otherwise noted. The meetings will be, the minutes once approved will be posted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Basic ground rules. We are going to turn to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold your name until your name is called. If you don't hear your name, raise your hand and you'll be recognized. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through me, taking care to identify yourself. For items of public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will record public comments to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. That's me. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And typically what we do is people raise their hands and signify their either agreement or disagreement. So that being said, the first, we say we have a quorum and we have the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
Second? I see a second, Peter Kahn. All those in favor, raise their hands, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved and we'll proceed according to the agenda. We also have the proposed minutes for our last meeting on August 6th, and they've been available for review. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
So moved.
And to have a motion, a second. Anybody going to second that? Approval of the minutes?
Bill Sherman seconded.
Okay, do you have a second? All those in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed? No. Okay, the minutes from the last meeting are approved. Our speaker today, and this is a little preface. I think it's Patrick Reed, the town's new transportation planner. Patrick and his part of the government are, I believe, a component of the planning board. And we're very happy that he is able to join us. I think, at least during the years I've been on a member of this committee, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody else, I think that we've heard, Patrick, you're perhaps our third traffic planner over this period of time. And we are interested to hear from you how your experience in general that you bring to Nantucket and what you're learning as you start up. And I know you're brand new in the job. I think if you haven't already figured out where many of the traffic problems lie, you have 5 members of this committee and perhaps members of the public who are willing to help you understand each one of our favorite peeves. But in general, over the 15 or so years I've been a seasonal resident, traffic seems to be a bigger issue each year, and traffic includes, at least in my head, traffic on the road, traffic on the sidewalks, the issue of parking here and there, and what I think is the continual improvement of the town's transportation system, which hopefully helps people and alleviates traffic. And I take it all those are things that are under your purview. So welcome to the Advisory Committee for Non-Voting Taxpayers. Patrick, we look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. What I can do is I can give you a brief overview of my experience, just introduce myself, let you know a little bit about my position, my role with the town, and then we can go ahead and, kind of shift into a listening session format because as Mr. Chair mentioned, I'm very much still, after almost about 5 months in now, almost 6. I'm still very green. It's going to take a little bit to untangle all of the different things that are going on in the town. So this is a great opportunity for me to hear from you about some of the things you're interested in seeing and what your priorities are. A little bit about me. I've been practicing transportation planning now for almost 8 years. My experience is mostly in the Mid-Atlantic. I had been working for Montgomery County planning most recently. If you're familiar with the metropolitan DC area, that's where most of my experience comes from. In that particular county, I worked as a transportation planner doing everything from long-range planning to site development planning. So wide range. And that's a great county to work in because you really see the whole gamut, right? You have these smaller urban areas, you've got some suburban areas, and then you have in the more rural part of the county, which is quite large actually, these village center type places. Before working in Montgomery County, I also had stints with the District Department of Transportation, DDOT, as well as the city of Alexandria in Virginia, doing transportation planning there. In some ways, Alexandria is a good lesson in kind of assessing historic needs, transportation and places with historic needs. If you're familiar with that city, they have a very interesting, significant historic downtown with, in some places, cobblestone streets as well. In any case, that's sort of my background. Again, I've done a range of different items in related to transportation planning, all parking, bike ped planning, which I'm very interested in, some traffic planning, site plan development, as well as long range planning. And I think that kind of wide breadth of skills is helpful because in a position in Nantucket where we only have one transportation planner, you really do need someone who can focus on many different things, all from the minute to the long range planning. In my role with the town, I serve the NP and EDC, so the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission. They basically set the priorities and work plan that I'm to move forward with. We do have a new commission, so I'm interested to hear what their priorities will be going forth. But essentially what I do is I manage the towns and really regions. There is, maybe I should take a step back. There's a distinction between the town and the region. Massachusetts is very interesting. We are a unique place in Massachusetts where we have one region that has only one town. Whereas if you look at most of the other regional bodies in Massachusetts, they have multiple municipalities. So we're very unique in that regard. And it's helpful in some ways because it makes things more efficient for the town in terms of getting federal aid. So what I do is I manage our 3C transportation process. What that is essentially figuring out how to program our federal aid to move forward the region's priorities, which, generally understood are the same as the town's priorities because those, the region and the town are essentially one geography. So this involves anything from trying to go after grants to get funding to move some of our projects forward, doing bicycle pedestrian planning, doing things like technical assistance work for the town as a body itself. I've been doing some things related to looking at sort of the parking and loading situation, supporting the town's groups, such as the traffic safety work group, and kind of providing technical expertise to folks on that staff and coordinating with police, fire, DPW when we get public requests for changes for things in town, as well as, supporting citizen requests. So every once in a while, get a request to look at an intersection or something like that, helping people come up with concepts that might work, and then trying to figure out the next steps for, how we would fund these things. So that's basically sort of the brief overview of where I've been and what I'm currently doing now. But as I mentioned earlier, I think this is a perfect opportunity for me to hear from you as sort of a channel to the NP and EDC about what you might be interested in terms of traffic, transportation planning, bicycle pedestrian planning, and even transit planning. I mean, I know we have the NRTA that's sort of in its own bucket, but I do work with Paula frequently and coordinate with her. So the sort of the floor would be open to you. I can't wait to hear about what your experiences are and what you're interested in. So I'll turn it back to Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I do have an initial question. Is it true that the purple line is going to extend all the way to Nantucket?
No, unfortunately, that project's been quite stalled. So I think you'd be years away from anything.
That it's emblematic of where, at least my perception is, we are in Nantucket, quite stalled on a lot of key traffic issues. And I'll just, my pet gripes are all of the daily traffic around the choke points. And we have in the past, and I think this is probably a message you're hearing from others, The town has tried to address a lot of its traffic problems in the past. And I think the biggest obstacle has been the annual town meeting, where the town comes up with a plan to put in a rotary. And that plan somehow it has to be funded. And that's where the annual town meeting usually comes into play, in my experience. And a number of good plans, I think from a traffic planning perspective, have died at the annual town meeting. And they'd be on Old South Road, where the traffic, is sort of building up almost all the way from the airport to the main rotary in town nowadays. That probably would not have been solved by more rotaries further down, but it would have helped the flow a little bit. The Five Corners at the school. My recollection is the town planned to address both those things, put together a whole plan, and both of them got voted down with no funding at the end of town meeting, because there are a lot of voters, I think, on the island who are, just want to see things change. And so I don't know what can be done about that other than to engage in better coordination with the public. The people who have the votes can make the difference. And so far, there have been a number of those people. As you see how the annual town meeting works, I don't know if you've been to an annual town meeting here or any place. Sometimes these things get put on the end of the agenda where everybody's bored to death with the annual town meeting, except those people who really don't want to improve traffic. And so you have 100 people left over, and the traffic plan is voted down. Maybe better planning for annual town meetings. I don't know. So I'm not gonna bore you with my where I think things need to be improved. I think the improvement needs to be coordination with the voters to figure out what the problems are and how best to solve them. They're not really get solved. Let's put it, improve the flow of traffic, recognizing that Nantucket has become a very popular destination for a lot of people. And I notice that the flow of traffic is really pretty horrific in the main core area, both at the height of the season and at the, in the spring and the fall as well. So it's the roads just are not made for the amount of year-round traffic they are getting. So I'll stop that. Who wants to go next? Anybody? Gary, you have some views?
Well, I do. So first of all, Patrick, thank you for joining us. We appreciate that. When I look at situations in life, I always say, well, sometimes when there are problems, it really represents opportunities. And so for your coming on board at this time means you're a lucky man, because you have a lot of opportunities. And those opportunities, in my personal view, are the result of the enormous increase in seasonal population that we have experienced since the pandemic started. It is clear to everyone, I think, select board member, even some of the old timers at the Nantucket town meeting, that our infrastructure is currently unable to meet this current demand, especially for the high seasonal population months, July and August. And so I'm a little optimistic that as a result of this tremendous influx of so many people who likely will continue in greater numbers than in the past spending time with us, at least during the season, it may make the folks on the island at the annual town meeting much more acceptable to the kind of changes that the town has recommended. We've supported the town in recommending. The warrant articles were drafted and approved by the town. And of course, as Peter said, they didn't make it through the annual meeting. But maybe, as I said, as a result of the tremendous burden obvious to everyone now on our infrastructure, this might be the opportunity for us to resurrect those, for the town to resurrect those with your support, and get through. Now, I want to mention something that's it's a personal it's a personal goal of my own that I've so far been completely unsuccessful in getting the town to adopt. But since you're the new transportation planner, I will be sending you information as well. And that is to deal with the parking issues that are horrendous this year and last year. I have been a strong advocate of the creation of a parking facility downtown. And the reason that I came to that conclusion is I'm on the board of the New York Botanical Gardens in New York. And several years ago, dealing with parking issues, we decided to put up a structure. We called it, and we could call it here as well, an intermodal transportation facility. And what we did is right across the street from the gardens, we built a beautiful 3 or 4 story facility that doesn't look like a parking garage. It's full of ivy and lovely. And we are able to accommodate the parking needs of both the New York Botanical Garden customers and Lehman College, which is nearby, and Montefiore Hospital. And better than that, it serves to raise enough revenue so that it currently is providing to the New York Botanical Gardens, which is a nonprofit controlled by the city. It provides us $1.5 million net income revenue that we can use for our normal purposes. I have the whole presentation that we did many years ago when we instituted that, when we developed that and built it. I've sent it to Libby, I've sent it to Jason, the chair of the select board, sent it to a few others. And, you know, it's an idea that I hope that when the folks who are dealing with Harbor Place are trying to figure out the ultimate resolution of how to deal with that piece of land, which is owned by Stop and Shop and owned by Steve Karp and NIR, and you know, and I hope that, and the town, of course, owns a part of that. I hope that that gets some further consideration. So don't be surprised you'll get an email from me with the presentation that I hope, and maybe its time has come. Obviously, it would be done Nantucket style, so it would be lower than the other one, and but it would have to be approved by HCC and everybody else. But it would take a lot of the pressure off the merchants in town, because there would be a place to for people to park, being confident about that. And I told the town, not only that, in the winter, it would serve a very useful purpose, because so many of us seasonal folks are always looking for a place to store our vehicles during the winter months. And the parking garage or the intermodal transportation facility would be a safe place. You know, it would be built high above the necessary water levels, because it would be on the waterfront, but it would be a safe place, and town could collect a few $100s a month from tons of people who I know are constantly looking for places to keep their vehicles safe during the off season. Anyway, that's just my comments. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. Peter Kahn?
Let me pass to Don Green first, and I'll come back to me. Don seems to have.
Oh, great. I didn't see Don's hand up there. Sorry, Don.
Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
Sometimes my microphone doesn't work as well as it should. I think the problem is just too many cars. And it's a matter of figuring out how to get those cars off the street. They have an excellent shuttle system, the Wave. The only problem with it, it is not very conducive to customers. It's very shaky back and forth and a very uncomfortable ride. I don't know what can be done about that. And I would just ask the new transportation person to take a ride on one of them, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Even trying to get up and get off the vehicle, if it's an older person, it's you're very unsteady trying to get off the vehicle. It's just not consumer friendly. And it doesn't matter if you build garages or what. All it does is make room for more cars to come, and that's what will happen.
Okay. Thanks. So basically, Don, you think that the existing fleet of buses, and I guess the places you get on the buses, need some improvement it needs some accessibility improvements. Is that the issue?
The comfortableness of the ride, it's like on a roller coaster. It isn't, you actually feel like you have to hold on to something when you're, for those of us whose balance isn't the best in the world when you're riding around, because it's very wide. Even certain streets that it goes down, they have to be skillful in making that turn down Dover Street. So I think that, I've said this for many times, and someone could take a ride in those things, they'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So, good.
The access is fine. The one downtown, there's one for Surfside. Those are easily reachable, and there's seating there for people, so that's fine.
Peter Kahn?
Okay. First of all, Patrick, welcome. I too am from Montgomery County, live there, and so hate to lose you from there, but great to gain you here. And we could talk offline at some point about your experiences there. In any event, with due respect to Don, I don't see buses being here on Nantucket the answer. It's just not. It's the decline. My humble opinion is not going to shift to public transportation. So I think the issue is going to be, and I raise these as concerns. I don't have any answers, but things that really we as a group have talked about in the past, and I think need real focus again. Can one limit cars? What have other communities done in limiting private cars? That's tough, but maybe limiting rental vehicles may be the answer. The problem there, of course, is the economic weight of the rental car company owners that are here may be a problem, but that's another possibility. I've noticed over the years that the real traffic is in the morning and the evening, and it's actually in large part by construction vehicles and construction workers and what have you, with trucks of one form or another. We need these people, obviously, but there is an issue with with all the building that's going on here, and how do we manage that? The roundabouts that were suggested in years past were defeated at ATM. Maybe we need to do a better job selling them, because at least it seemed to me at that time that they were a pretty effective means of moving traffic more quickly. I live near I live near both Five Corners and the high school, so I have two major bottleneck areas there. The high school, as long as that tree is there and we have preservation, I'm afraid that we're going to be literally stuck with that issue. Whether you're able to put a roundabout there, I don't know, but that might alleviate it. Again, there's concern because it's so near the schools that children might not be able to easily manage them. I'm not sure that's the case. So those are I don't envy your position. There are a lot of issues here, not a lot of answers, but I do think it would be helpful to really do it very somewhat similar to us, because I've been here off season, and I guess I take some issue with what Peter said. I don't see it as bad in the in the off season, so to speak, as it clearly is in the main summer, July, August timeframe. So just a few thoughts.
Kathy and Bill Sherman, who's next? Kathy?
Sure. Welcome, Patrick. We need you, as everyone else has said. I on subjects, just my opinion on some of the things that have been talked about. I also think the roundabouts, the rotaries are a good solution. I think that what the town had put forward last time seemed like a reasonable approach, especially in the school area. I think they had managed to come up with something that would avoid the tree. So that, but the safety issue was a big concern. I think most of it is fear or not really understanding how rotaries work. I mean, I think the rotaries have been fairly safe, the ones that we do have, and they are used all the time. I just came back from a trip to the British Isles, where I not only had to drive on the wrong side of the road, but everything is rotaries. So that was very exciting to do that. But it really did move the traffic along in cities, in places that had a lot more traffic than Nantucket. So I think that's still a viable option. But one of the problems I think the town has is when they come up with programs, they don't have a PR firm. They don't have somebody selling their ideas or explaining the thought process that went into them. So with a lack of knowledge, people tend to fear things. And I think I don't know how to fix that, because I don't think the town is in the business of merchandising or selling things. But anyway, that's that. Back to the bus. I use the bus when I can. I live out in Tom Nevers, so that's about 5 miles out of town, and encourage my guests to use it as well. Interesting feedback from our neighborhood. Overwhelmingly, people want the bus to come down the road at Tom Nevers. A lot of year-round people live here, a lot of people who need to get into town to work. Problems with that is if you are like a hospitality worker, you work into the night, you can't catch an 11:30 last trip out of town to get back home. So you really can't use it. That's one issue. And then the other issue was most people that I spoke with said, yeah, we have to have that come down our street, but we're never going to use it. So, okay, then why do you think it's really important to have? So I think there just needs to be some thought in that and finding out why that is. And then I also actually stood one day down at the Rotary just to count cars and trucks coming through. And I think that it was mentioned before, a lot of them are construction vehicles, I think, but most of them are landscaping trucks and trailers and people, that kind of thing. So the question is, if you reduce the number of cars, is that really going to help? Or do we still have all of these other kinds of vehicles so I think a traffic study of some sort that could really formally count, not just be anecdotal, me standing down or anybody standing down and having a count, I think would be really helpful to figure that out. And when you think about it, only so many cars can come on the ferry. That's self-limiting in and of itself. So where are all these vehicles coming from? I think a lot more are being registered on the island and stay here because you can't get reservations on the ferry and off the ferry. That's maybe a problem. I think Peter's right. Most of the people that would come here in the season to their summer homes are pretty wedded to their vehicles and are not likely to give them up. But I do think that the year-round population certainly would be able to benefit better if they were asked about what they need. So those are my thoughts.
Bill Sherman. I'd like to second all these suggestions of the roundabouts. When you look at the roundabout at Sparks Avenue, Pleasant, and realize how bad it was before that roundabout was in and how, for the most part, it worked so smoothly, allowing traffic to go in the multiple directions. It is a great godsend. I think if we could get the town voters to approve the financial end of installation of roundabouts, we'd buy ourselves maybe 5-10 years of better traffic conditions. In the long term, we just have simply to calm the fevered growth of the island. And so to my mind, it's very important to have a vision of what we'd like to see the island be like in the future. Some talk about how the land bank and the conservation foundation and so forth are using up too much land for conservation. That's actually positive in keeping the number of cars at a limit. And other techniques are needed to do the same, including curbing the long-term use of seasonal short-term rentals. Thank you.
Thanks. Let me ask Patrick a question, and then we'll see if any members of the public have any questions or observations that they would like to share with Patrick. Patrick, how does your job relate to both the ferry and the airport? Because the issue that Bill raised, which is growth, and what does the future hold? It seems to me relate quite a bit to the ferry and to the airport. And in the years that I've been here, the airport has, I believe, grown substantially in terms of the traffic in and out. And it sort of doubled, to my thinking, when the regional airlines went to those big regional jets, the 75 and 90 seat regional jets, instead of the 30 to 40 seat prop planes. And I think part of the developmental and growth problem of the island, unfortunately, is it's too easy to get to nowadays. And I worry about the island actively going out trying to increase traffic to the island. This year there's a Chicago nonstop. At the time I was living in Washington, I very loved the fact that I could get here on a nonstop, but at some point, I think we don't just look at short-term rentals and all the rest of that stuff, but we look at the transportation issue of it's an island. It's 40 miles off the coast of the mainland, more or less. And part of its protection was its distance and difficult to get to. Part of the wonderful thing about owning a house up here is it's so easy to get to. But is there some sort of thinking that ought to be had from the transportation standpoint about how much is too much in terms of access to an island with limited resources? Now that's a big question for you, Patrick. I don't expect you to answer today, but I think the embedded question in there is, do you have anything to do with either airport access to the island or steamship marine access to the island by the steamship company and the High Line, that sort of thing? And does that figure into your planning?
So I'll give you a very basic answer because I'm still trying to get my feet wet here. But in terms of interaction with the Steamship Authority and the airport, I know we do that when we update our long range plan, which we'll be doing in 2023. It's typically on a 4-year cycle. They're actually bumping it out to a 5-year cycle now at the federal level. So we'll be doing it every 5 years, but we do touch base then. I think it's a challenge, right? There's competing interests in some ways, because maximizing the amount of revenue you can get as an airport or a steamship authority is part of your job, right? To make sure that you can support your own services and operations. But at the same time, I respect and acknowledge there's a need to do it in a managed way, and trying to understand I think trying to understand what those needs are from the steamship authority as well as the airport is sort of the first step, and what their long-term vision is. I think that is important to know and to understand if it syncs up with, people who live in the town's perspective about what they want, or people like yourselves who visit the town very frequently or active members of the community, understanding what you want and seeing how it all shakes out. I think is part of my job, is to facilitate that coordination and dialogue. It's a challenging task. I think in terms of thinking about the regulatory framework for that sort of thing, your options are sometimes somewhat limited, right? You can think about pricing, things like that to kind of disincentivize, travel, if you will, or too much access. But at the same time, that comes with its own associated host of issues, right, for folks. So it's balancing all these disparate needs and trying to put them together as best you can and muddle your way through. And facilitating that dialogue is sort of the first step. So I know that's sort of a very basic answer, but I think it's an important question, and it's actually a good guide for me to hear that from you, so I can understand that's sort of a priority would be to do a good job of making sure we coordinate with steamship and the airport.
Great, thank you. Members of the public, any questions for Patrick? Yes, Francie.
Hi, Peter. Hi, everyone. And Patrick, welcome. Yeah, you've got a big job ahead of you, and we're glad. I know everyone's glad to have you. I am Francie Neely, and I am the co-president of the Monomoy Civic Association. And we yesterday had a meeting of our membership, and I'm guessing that about 60 members were there. So we consider it very, very important to consult our constituency to determine what their views are before we speak on their behalf. And I am speaking on their behalf, not just my own personal view, when I once again asked the advisory committee for non-voting taxpayers not to speak anecdotally and on their personal behalves.
Francie, could I interrupt you? Do you have a question for Patrick or an observation for Patrick?
Well, I do have an observation.
If you have an observation for the committee in general, which sounds like the same observation you gave us last time, maybe you should save it till the portion of our meeting when we will consider public comments in general. Because Patrick is a busy person, and we want to, finish this segment, and he can then go on his way if he so chooses.
Well, Peter, I am talking to Patrick because you all were offering, 6 of you, your personal views on traffic.
Well, we asked you your personal views on traffic then.
Well, I should, my personal
Perhaps you
view
can
is
give us those. In other words, stick to the subject.
I am speaking to the subject.
Okay,
I
so
think it's
let's
not
hear it.
very appropriate of you to speak over me, please.
I'm not speaking over you. I'm the chair, and I'm trying to find that you stay on the subject.
Patrick, the subject is traffic. And I think that this committee should be polling its constituency, or what should be its constituency, of non-voting taxpayers before any suggestions are posed. For instance, roundabouts were discussed or mentioned, buses were mentioned, and the building of a parking facility in downtown Nantucket was mentioned. But no other non-voting taxpayer, to my knowledge, has been consulted about those views, other than the people who have spoken today. So I'm just asking.
Excuse me, I'm going to have to rule you out of order, because that is not the issue. You were given the floor to tell us what you are thinking about traffic, not what you were thinking about my thoughts about traffic or anybody else's thoughts about traffic. That's what this segment is about. So if you would like to participate, you need to follow the rules.
What is the rule, or did you not?
The rules were read at the beginning. Maybe you didn't listen to them.
I did, sir.
Okay, and I said okay.
Do you not
have anything about traffic? We can hear about you about polling later.
I say that this committee is irrelevant if it does not.
Okay, you're out of order. You now. Thank you. We will move on to the next person. Anybody else? Jeff Parker? Yes.
Morning, Jeff Parker. I live at 4 Monomoy Road. And I just wanted to make a couple of observations about traffic. if I made some notes as we're going on, I think it would be very unlikely that the town would vote for a parking garage in downtown Nantucket. As much as that might be a solution, it certainly moves Nantucket closer to what the Cape might look like. And I think there's a whole feeling on the town. They want to try to keep the town looking like Nantucket. So I think that probably doesn't fly. Certainly if rotaries don't fly, my guess is the parking garage. With respect to rotaries, if you wanted the town, I think rotaries would actually be a good idea. I mean, if you think about the two rotaries, the two primary rotaries, they move lots of traffic through those rotaries that would not move without them. If you wanted the town to really vote for rotaries, I would think you would need to do some kind of a serious presentation about the benefit of traffic flow on a rotary versus the benefit of traffic flow at corners. And in fact, you might even do a study on the island, have somebody doing a traffic flow measurement at the rotaries, and then do another traffic flow measurement at Four Corners, and sort of try to come up with some statistics that would help people in the town understand the benefit of those rotaries. Now, that doesn't speak to the difficulty of figuring out how do you get the land at that high school area to be sufficient to handle a rotary, because there's a lot of land that's used up in these rotaries. So that's one observation. There's a couple of other things that I don't know if they're in your purview or not, but I don't think we could suggest that traffic's going to get less. I would say we're going to suggest that traffic is going to get more, even with the limitation of cars coming over on the ferry. I think we made the observation that there seemed to be more cars kept here during this off season. And with the development on the island, you have more and more and more workers. I think if you did another study, you might find that a very large part of all the traffic is commercial. Anecdotally, I was out to dinner with a resident in Sconset the other day, and they said it took them 55 minutes to go from Sconset to the Westmore Club. I wasn't at the Westmore Club, but that gives you a sense of how difficult things are at certain times. And I think, as Peter made the observation, sometimes traffic on Old South Road is, I don't think I've ever seen it quite to the airport, but it's almost to the airport. And I can't believe it must take 20 or 25 minutes to get down there. And I'm sure it frustrates people. And for the first time ever, I've been coming to Nantucket since the 70s. My kids have been here every summer. For the first time ever this year, I have witnessed several situations of road rage. People are getting angry and frustrated in the traffic that they're dealing with. So maybe there's something you could do to remind people that when they come to Nantucket, we're on an island. You know, courtesy. I don't know how we would do that, but if you could get everybody driving a vehicle to be courteous, that would be a great step in the right direction. Speeding is a big problem. On Monomoy Road, as soon as they turn off Milestone, I would say some cars are going 45 and 50 miles an hour. Electric bikes on the bike path. Some people have mentioned how dangerous that is. You're walking along on a bike path. Not only do bicycles come by without telling you they're coming by, which is certainly inappropriate, electric bikes are now coming by at 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour. So I think you have the parking issue, you have courtesy issues, you have this rotary issue, you have electric bike issues. The last thing I will say is there is a person on the island that you should probably spend some time getting to know, a fellow by the name of Alan Worden. Does anybody on the call know Alan?
Yeah,
Peter Kahn knows Alan.
I think we know of Alan.
Okay, Alan has, and I'm happy to send this report around to the group. Alan did a major contract for Nantucket a few years ago. He runs a company called Community Data Platforms. And he did a beautiful presentation of what the future looks like. And in fact, as a result of his analysis, some of the airplane stuff that Peter talked about, Chicago, Philadelphia, is a result of that. That is, he did traffic studies of where people are coming from and was able to send that to the airlines, and they changed some of their airline flow. So I think to Francie's point, I think we need data. However we get the data, I think we need data to help convince people how to change a problem that's only going to get worse. I think you're in a catch-22 problem here, Patrick. You're not going to be able to lower the traffic on Nantucket. The question is, how do we manage the traffic on Nantucket? And with that, I'll say thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I just comment. I believe both of the Rotary plans were supported by all the kinds of analysis and data that you are referring to, and for those two projects. And so thank you. And it's typical. The typical way that Nantucket does its planning is that when it has big projects like those rotaries, it goes to experts and gets the support that is necessary to justify the projects.
Peter, would you like a copy of Alan's report? Would that be helpful?
I would love it.
Okay.
If you want to email it to me, and I'll get, maybe Jeff, I'll get offline, I'll get you an email address, or
Perfect.
you have it already.
You want my
Yeah,
cell
yeah.
number? Let me give you my cell number. You can just
Great.
give me a ring. 561-445-3974. And I'd be happy to send it. I can send it to you and then you can circulate it. And I think it would be helpful for Patrick to see this.
Okay, Jeff. Yeah.
Alan did cover in the study. I know that Alan, I'm very close to Alan, as is my wife, and we were with him just for several hours a couple of days ago, the other night at the Westmore Club. His study, which was an excellent study a few years ago, did in fact calculate the amount of automobile traffic at times on the island. So it's something that Patrick really would benefit from seeing.
Good. Is there another member of the public that wanted to make a comment? Okay, in that case, Patrick, I want to thank you very much for your participation this morning. If you have a final word, in addition to goodbye, you're certainly free to make it. I think, as you can see, people are very happy that we once again have a traffic planner after quite a hiatus. I think a 2-year hiatus. And we look forward to your success. And if there's some way we can participate in it, let us know.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate this opportunity. Yeah, I'd love to keep the lines of communication open. I'm sure as things progress, we'll be putting plans, ideas out, concepts, and being able to use you all as a sounding board will be really helpful to kind of make these improvements and move things forward. So please do feel free to reach out anytime. My contact information is on the website. I can share it with the chair as well. So you can, if anything comes up, you ever have a friend who has a question or comment, you can always steer them my way. I'm happy to have a chat. So thank you again for the opportunity. Much appreciated.
Welcome to Nantucket and Massachusetts.
Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.
Good luck in a tough job.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I hope that we could do, Gary Beller is our liaison with the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee. And I hope that we could just have sort of a quick update on what is happening and where things are going. Thanks.
I'm glad to do that, Peter. You know, the Coastal Resiliency Plan was completed after about 1.5 years work. The town hired a firm called Arcadis, which is a terrific organization. It's an international organization, headquartered, I guess, in Holland, and they develop plans dealing with rising tides and storm surges and effects of climate change for tons of communities, including Boston and Miami and parts of New York as well. And we were lucky to be able to have them. And they actually, with our committee, we spent 1.5 years meeting and came up with a final coastal resiliency plan. I recommend all of you to go to the website. If you go to the town's website, where it says Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee, on the left side of that page, you'll see the Coastal Resiliency Plan, and just click on that, and you can take a look on your computer, the whole plan. I don't recommend you necessarily read the whole plan. It's 300 pages, but there is a 28-page executive summary. And I'd like to recommend that all of you take a look at that plan. At the beginning of that plan, our committee provided some comments. I wanted to read to you some of these comments about the plan. The plan focuses on the island's critical infrastructure as the highest priority for funding of resiliency measures to protect the entire island. Once again, when you start dealing with the issues, we're talking about damages in excess, damages to the island assets of over $3 billion over a period of 20 to 70 years. And so when you're dealing with that, part of what you must do is to look at priorities. The recommendations of the resiliency plan include policy, regulatory, and zoning initiatives, governance best practices, and even homeowner preparedness. You'll see there, of course, it relates to Nantucket's near total dependence on the steamship authority, the risk to our public utilities and transportation network, the lack of available land for relocation, and the unique historic character of the downtown area in particular. Those are all forces shaping the recommendations of our committee. At the same time, the community demonstrated a strong commitment to the integrity of the natural environment and the importance of incorporating natural solutions. Most important is the call for the community to work together to address the local challenges from climate change, employing all of the tools and funding sources. One thing very important is community outreach and education, which is the cornerstone of coastal resilience. Property owners should be aware of the vulnerabilities at their location so they can choose the level of response that best suits their situation. Of course, deciding how to pay for resilience projects, which will likely involve partnerships of private, nonprofit, and public, local, state, and federal entities, must happen in a way that equitably distributes both the burden and the benefits for the property owners across neighborhoods and island-wide. The costs are significant, and the recommended projects will require widespread support, both on and off the island. However, the cost of not preparing for climate change is even greater. So in thinking about priorities, what we looked at was what are the top at-risk essential community facilities that came out of this entire study, and I have them listed on a list here. One is the Steamship Authority Terminal at Steamboat Wharf. Second, Coast Guard Station Brant. Next is Stop and Shop downtown. Next is the Highline Cruises, the terminal, Strait Wharf, and also downtown, the National Grid Electrical Substation 2. Substation is 2 Commercial Street. Those are the top 5 at-risk community facilities based on the scoring that we did. When looking at the strategies, we basically break it down into 3 overall strategies: protect, adapt, or relocate. And in certain areas, the plan recommends protection, putting up groins and beach structures. Adapt is going on all over the island now, especially now as people keep raising homes, adapting to the expected flow. And the final major strategy is to relocate. And we understand that, and people can see as they look, that there's a lot of places we cannot save. There's an area in Mattakit, just before where the bluff is. There are 27 homes. They will not be able to be saved. We have them listed they're in purple, and it's pretty clear 20 or 40 years down the road, they're gone. And no one, neither Arcadis nor any expert that we could think of could be able to figure a way to kind of save them. So people have time to adjust, and just to say how when we're looking at the whole island, they kind of broke the whole island into 6 major areas, although these aren't the only areas that are covered by the study. The whole island is covered by the study, but the 6 kind of special areas, one is downtown and Grand Point, downtown where the ferries are and stuff like that. Mattakit itself, which is at risk. Nantucket Harbor, Palpas, and Cotu Island, Sconset, the South Shore, including the airport, and then the North Shore area from jetties all the way to Eel Point. So those were the kind of focuses where they looked on, and basically there's the plan. There are 40 projects that are recommended, but the highest priority are the ones that are essential to the survival of the island, which includes the ferry terminal, because that's where our food, not just the people can come from the airport, but that's where our food comes. And we have a situation where if you look at the prospective plan, in a certain period of time, I forget if it's 10 years out or 20 years out, the road that comes from the terminal, Easy Street, will be closed, will be flooded 100 times during the year, just at normal high tide, not a storm, not a special high tide, just normal high tide. 100 times a year, there will be no trucks delivering food, no people go, right? Another issue we have on Mattakit, in a certain period of time, and I forget the exact years based on current projections, the waste disposal will no longer be available because the road will be underwater. So people all over the island will not be able to get there. And so one of the plans, one of the 40 projects, we're planning on raising the road. Otherwise, the waste disposal unit will not be available to the entire island. And so the biggest question, of course, once we have had these 40 priorities defined and indicated, how do we fund them? And that's a big deal. And we're in the process now of, we are actually trying to hire for the town. The town has put some money aside for coastal resiliency matters, but we don't have enough, surely enough in our budget. If you take a look at how much money is being set aside, it's a very modest amount. But we need a grant writer. We are now currently waiting for a decision by the state of Massachusetts. We're looking for a grant of $275,000 to do a plan. I think it's the plan for the Mattakit survival for the road, but we need to get the funding, and you go where the money is, either in the state or the federal government. Hopefully FEMA will be able to deliver some funding for us in the future, but that's why the town needs to get some more professional talent writing for these grants, because we're fighting and competing with all the other areas you can think of that are low-lying around the country that are also seeking the same kind of funding from FEMA to take issues. Nothing has to be done immediately, but you know, if you look at 10 years, I think it's 2030, they're talking about 9 inches or 10 inches normal, a normal rise in the tide. And in the meantime, the town has put we can't change the laws and the regulations promptly. What we are trying to do, and we've got the select board to mandate that all of the town regulatory bodies should be taking into consideration coastal resiliency issues in connection with their consideration of permits for buildings that are in areas to be affected by the climate change and rising tides. That's happening now, but I must say I'm a little frustrated from time to time. I attend some of these planning board meetings, and people are still putting up swimming pools in areas that are prone to flooding. And when I raise my hand and say, what about the coastal resiliency issues? Don't you understand that? They say, yes, as a result of that, we're raising the level of the pool, you know, and they got approval right on North Beach Street, right past Easton, that new motel. So we can't change all the rules immediately. At some point, the town in theory will be making recommendations to go to the annual meeting. And where the rubber meets the road is when we start putting into effect or proposing regulations that will slow the real estate industry from selling shorefront properties. That's where the rubber meets the road. And unless the town provides those support, then we won't be able to stop them. People will still point to the fact that I'm within the local rules and you can't stop me. So that's my report, Mr. Chairman. You're on mute, Peter.
Around my household, my being on mute is called godly silence or something like that. I just was what I was trying to say on mute was, Gary, thank you for all the hard work you're doing as a member of that committee and for the report. You know, it sounds like there's more bad news than good news, and we look forward to further developments to do the best we can with a force that is clearly beyond our control. So thanks a lot.
By the way, I just want to mention that our Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee meets every other Tuesday morning, 10 to 12, and they're open to the public the same way our meeting is. So any of you that are interested in attending, you can Zoom on, can watch it directly or watch it on YouTube, but you can attend those meetings as well and see what we're up to.
All right, good. Thanks a lot. What I'd like to say, I skipped over the appointment of our representatives to the short-term rental work group.
Peter, could I just ask a question of Gary?
Sure, go ahead, Jeff.
Gary, do you know a fellow that lives on the island, a non-resident guy, Elliot Gortz?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
No, we don't.
So Elliot,
I know him.
Elliot was the past Commodore at the Great Harbor Yacht Club and is president of the Great Harbor Yacht Club Foundation. And I'm on the board of the foundation. We have about a $2 million kitty. And our mission is the health of the harbor. Now, my sense is you might be able to have a meeting with Elliot, who's a terrific guy, and get him possibly to put up some money for this part of this $275,000 you're looking. They're looking for projects. And I would think that this is close enough to the health of the harbor that if, you know, maybe they put up 100 grand and get the town to put up some money. I mean, sort of a town and gown kind of thing. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but it's a possibility.
Jeff, I want to tell you that at our last meeting 2 weeks ago, we had a representative, the person from Great Harbor Yacht Club, as well as Nantucket Yacht Club, attend our meeting, and Sheila Luce as well. Had all the harborfront people there, and we purposely, to get them on board with the things that we're doing, we also had even a representative from NIR, based on the fact that they control so much of the waterfront. So we are doing what we can, and they are aware of what our initiatives are.
You remember who came from Great Harbor?
I don't know. I don't remember her name. It was a woman.
Do you think if the foundation put up, half the money, the town would put up the other half?
No, not for that specific project. No,
Okay.
that won't happen.
All right.
But we're actually hopeful that when the people from the state of Massachusetts presented to us that these grants were available, and that was 2 months ago, 3 months ago, the person who represented the state entity was fortunately extremely familiar with Nantucket. He is familiar with the risks that we face, the fact that without the ferry coming in and the fact that Steamboat Wharf is going to be in trouble in several years. And so he was extremely positive. I shouldn't feel optimistic that we're going to get this grant, but we all felt pretty good about that meeting because he said, I know what your issues are. I'm familiar with Nantucket. I want you to put that application in and I'll do what I can to help it succeed. So I'm kind of hoping, Jeff, that we're going to be able to be a recipient of that early funding.
Well, if we think traffic's a problem, trying to control Mother Nature is a bigger problem.
Yeah, it sounds to me as though the foundation can keep its powder dry for another worthy project, and that this is going to be state money.
By the way, Jeff, specifically with respect to the Great Harbor Yacht Club, if you look at the plan, if you look at the coastal resiliency plan, you will see that one of our pies in the sky is building a perimeter wall protecting the harbor. However, the perimeter wall protecting the harbor ends just before Great Harbor Yacht Club's property. And so we did have that discussion.
I'm selling my membership.
No, but we had the discussion, and basically your representative, the Great Harbor representative, said to us, we're hoping that you will, as you're reconsidering this, just move the line a little bit to the right. So they're right on board. Your people are right on board with us. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, anybody else? And then we can move on to that. I appreciate the comment and the offer, Jeff. So the appointment of the ACNVT representative on the short-term rental working group. We previously, I think 2 meetings ago, voted to approve a slate for consideration. And let me just, I've been in contact with the town as to this appointment and how to do it. The information from the town is that we are to nominate 3 people, and then the select board will determine who will become the full-time and who is the alternate in this process. So they will winnow our 3 down to 2. They have to be members of our group, and the concept is that I will communicate our desires to who the primary member and who the alternate member will be, but that we will submit the 3 names. The individuals need to fill out. This is like applying for the committee once again. We'll need to fill out the form, which is on the town website. I have a copy and I can send it to people and have it submitted. And I'll let you know exactly where, because that's a little bit vague right now, on or before the 26th. So that's next week. And if anybody is out of town and needs me to fill in the form for them, I'll be happy to do so. I think one of our slate has told me that she wants to withdraw her name from consideration. And the slate was, I don't have the minutes in front of me, but the slate I'm going to propose for our consideration this morning will be Peter Kahn as the primary member, Bill Gardner as the alternate, and Gary Beller as our third choice. Not that he's our third choice, but as the person who they want one extra choice, so we'll give them one extra. We'll give them Gary as our one extra choice because you can't go wrong with any of the three. And so what I would like to do is have a motion to approve that slate, and I will communicate with the select board as to how we would like the selection to come out, and then the select board will consider it. And they're looking at all kinds of different, there's a list of things that they're going to consider when they look at these things, which I will also send around to you all. This is all on the town website in any event. So do I have a motion to approve that site? Yep. Kathy, you move? So move. Okay, a second. Do you want to speak, Kathy, or?
I forgot, I was on mute, just like you. So moved.
Okay, and Bill Sherman, you're seconding?
Any, yes,
All those in favor, raise their hand or say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So I see 3, 4, that's 4 ayes. And Don Green and Bill Gardner, I'm not sure I've seen yours.
Aye.
And Don, and that's Don Green. How about you?
I said aye, Bill.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. And I think Bill Sherman, are you an aye or an A?
aye.
Aye. Okay, so I think that's unanimous then.
Can we assume that all are willing to serve, able to serve?
What I told Peter is, and basically what I'm going to fill out when I fill out the form, is that I'm only there because they asked for 3, but I'm busy enough between this committee and the Coastal Resiliency Committee and the other nonprofit boards that I sit on in other places that I recommend that the working group take the chair's recommendations first and second, because I have enough on my plate, but I'll fill out the form just because they want that third person in there.
Yeah, and so we're good. And Peter Kahn, you're on board and ready, willing, and able?
Yes.
Good. Good. Okay, and we heard that from Bill Gardner as well. Okay, so then we have the next item is, I thought we ought to just take a couple of minutes. We had the DPW director last week, and do we have any suggestions for him, any attaboys? And I'll write him a note thanking him for his appearance. But are there any issues in particular that think the DPW should be providing attention to, that you don't believe they are providing attention to?
Peter?
Yep.
I just think we discussed it last week with him, but I think we should really strongly encourage a more systematic rotating review of the needs of the, so that it's constantly being, needs of the island are constantly being attended to on a rotating basis, as opposed to a what appears to be a very haphazard, squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of approach. And there are, obviously there are programs that can be instituted that, and other towns obviously are doing so, which so that everything is on a sort of a rotating plan of 2, 3, could be depending on what the need is, months or years kind of, but something that people can see and understand when the streets are going to be repaired kind of thing, as opposed to the haphazard way it's being done now. Obviously, if there's an emergency, that needs to be taken care of immediately, but there needs to be more planning, and it needs to be more transparent.
Okay, I think what I would do is probably put that in the nature of a, we think that, you know, we applaud his efforts to improve the management, especially in these areas, and think that really needs, you know, the attention, quite a bit of attention. That's good.
I think his comment, excuse me, I think his comment with regard to training local, you know, more people, and somehow, you know, I don't know, you know, it was a little vague as to using some of the skilled workforce on, you know, the private skilled workforce on island to supplement. It should be encouraged, but I'm not sure, you know, I think again, it was a little bit pie in the sky at this point. It was not.
Yeah, I thought it was a good idea, and like a lot of good ideas, the question is, how do you implement them? And that's especially given all the pressure and the shortages that he is facing. Okay, yeah, I can include something about that as well.
Peter,
good. Yep.
It's not for your letter to thank him, but I was a little concerned that a lot of his answers did not suggest he was completely on top of the situation, when he didn't know how many openings he had, how many employees he has, and how many openings he has. The DPW has an enormous responsibility on this island. And like every other organization from the town, they are understaffed. And so it's so important for them to have a prioritization program so they know how to deal with the priority issues on the island. I didn't get quite that feeling of comfort, but as I say, that shouldn't be in your letter, but
yeah. No, one gets the feeling that they are playing whack-a-mole over there. And it's, you know, they just have a lot more demand than they have supply for the things that they do. And
Peter, one more specific that I think might be worth mentioning. You know, he talked about vehicles being, inoperable. And again, a maintenance, you know, there needs to be a regular maintenance program for all the vehicles that they have.
Too many vehicles are redlined for lack of maintenance. Okay. Let me see. So we have an item, follow up on proposition, continuing meetings via Zoom. We have been trying to get out of the Zoom business all summer long. As I mentioned, I'm currently I've been positive for COVID for a couple of days now, and hope not to be positive tomorrow. But I just tend to think that for the foreseeable future, things like this are going to rise, and we're better off to continue to meet virtually, you know, hybrid options may be available, but I've not checked into hybrid options, but you know.
I'm a big believer in hybrid. I mean, I really do, you know, maybe I'm one of the few who's zoomed out, but I am totally zoomed out with all, you know, not just from this committee, but all the, you know, my professional life. And I do think sometimes face-to-face meetings, you know, if you've got COVID, I mean, you should be, you know, I'm glad to, A, I'm glad you're feeling better, but B, I want you to participate. But I think we can do it in a hybrid fashion. And I gather now, as ugly as that trailer is that's sitting there by the Stop and Shop, that's going to, you know, we're going to be stuck with that. But apparently it has the facilities. And I think I got my COVID shot there. I got a flu shot. I got some shot there, and the interior actually isn't so bad. So I think it is worth staying on top of. It may be too late for this season, But I really would encourage us to, at the very least, try the hybrid as opposed to just caving. I mean, during the winter, I think it's great that we can continue to meet, but I'd hate to give up the in-person opportunities.
But right now, we have permission to continue meeting solely electronically through March 2023. I think that's the last that I heard from Erica Mooney, that the last governor's order allowed that to continue, which will be a problem for us if we plan to voice our opinion at the annual town meeting, which will take place in the first week of May next year, so that at least in the last year, we had the opportunity to meet electronically, so we could formulate a position that which one of us that was willing to speak at the meeting would have some guidance as to what our positions were on any particular warrant articles. So interestingly, I'll tell you what was it? I forget if it was Libby told us, or that the thing holding up the thing holding up the permissibility of continuing these electronic meetings is that a lot of communities wanted it to go on forever, I guess, right? And not all of the people in the Senate or the House in Massachusetts feel that it's appropriate time to do that. And they were trying to work that out.
Yeah.
One thing, Peter, I think that just another point, and I agree, in person, it was always better for meetings. The hybrid version, like you said, people said it's limited to that trailer, or I think the Fairgrounds Road, I think that's where the select board meets, but the trailer is where we would be. We would have to make sure they would provide us a technician to run the thing, because it's not something we can run ourselves. And it pretty much does keep us on Saturdays, because that facility is just booked, just like the old facility was when we used to meet in person all the time. We went to Saturdays because during the week it's taken by all the other town groups. So that gives us less freedom to meet on other days if we go with the hybrid version. So that's just another consideration.
Well, I will communicate about that and let you know what I hear. But I think that the next meeting will be virtual again, and then we float off into, people start floating off into the fall, so that it is likely that they'll be virtual until next summer, depending on what happens with this emergency order, which I'm going to guess is going to get extended in small increments depending on the situation. Okay, good. So I think we're at a point here. Next speaker, we're looking for a select board member for our next speaker, and possibly the data fellow that Jeff mentioned, and we've discussed in the future. Gary, we might use your good offices to see if we can get him involved, as you recently had dinner with him, apparently.
Yes, but he's recovering from surgery this morning.
Oh,
But anyway, it's not too serious, so
yeah.
fortunately.
Well, a virtual meeting would be just perfect for him.
In Maryland,
yeah.
Maryland. He's
In Maryland, good.
John Hopkins, I think, somewhere.
So I think we're at a point where I think that Francie Neely has some things that she wants to share with us, and let's hear it. If Francie, we understand your position. We understand your position on surveys. We've, if you want to repeat that, that's fine. Be happy to talk about a little bit about your definition and what perhaps is missing from that. Or if I could put it this way, filling out that definition of commercial, and I think the two points there are, primarily commercial, or primarily is the word, and then the other is owner occupied. I think there's still a lot of ambiguity about what makes something primarily and what doesn't. And again, what does owner occupied mean, and how much owner occupancy or little, and so on and so forth. Because in my view, your ideas are important ideas. And the issue that I've always been asked, and I'm sure you've been asked as a lawyer, especially by judges, when you ask for an injunction or something, well, would you give me the language, and then it's sometimes far more difficult than just the concepts to actually have language that people can understand and that can be binding. And so I was hopeful that maybe you'd be interested in talking about the progress that you've made, and perhaps what the next step is to do that.
I'd be happy to do that. And I hope you get a negative COVID test tomorrow.
Oh my God, thank you very much.
And I hope you have not had many symptoms.
It's been what I would call sort of a mild cold, except it's been so long since, I've had a cold, or anybody's had a cold, that, it's stuffy, very low grade fever, and then it's diminished. So I feel fortunate, but I also feel that, 4 shots, and probably I've had this once or twice before and didn't even know it, but who knows?
Yeah, same for me. I think I've never had it, but who knows, right? Well, anyway, quick recovery. And I really appreciate your willingness to listen to that. And let me start, besides wishing you quick recovery, by saying I intended no disrespect earlier. At the conclusion of my remarks, I'll come back and just say, I, for one, and I think others with whom I've spoken, including some of the comments I've seen in the paper, suggest that there is at a minimum confusion about, the scope of this committee's work, Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers. And so if I were someone like, Patrick, who listened to you all have very interesting ideas, you're very well-intentioned people, and each of your personal ideas are all valid and interesting to follow up on. But my point about that, Peter, and the rest of the committee, is simply that they are not representative necessarily, of the broader base of non-voting taxpayers without study into that subject. And I would respectfully ask that this committee make in some way clear that when you're speaking on an issue with town officials, and for that matter at town meeting, when this is the case, that you have not polled other non-voting taxpayers and you don't purport to speak on their behalf, but rather you're speaking on behalf of yourselves as whatever the number is, non-voting taxpayers. That's my point. And I completely agree with you. I don't need to keep pounding that point in. If I'm understood, you don't have to agree with me, but if I'm understood on that, I don't have to keep, and I won't keep saying it. But I do think that sort of statement is important, because when I, as a non-voting taxpayer, I don't get a voice at town meeting, hear a group called Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers speak, I think reasonably so, I believe, wow, they're speaking for me and people like me. If you understand my point of view on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that you may be one of the few people that don't understand the point, quite seriously. And what we've done in terms of this, I think speaks volumes. You mentioned your lack of a voice at the town meeting. Did you look at, I think it's Article 87 of the last town meeting that was passed by the town. And Article 87 was an amendment. I may have the number wrong.
78.
78. It's, I guess in the rule of nines, I should have been able to divide and figure out I had to, reverse numbers. In any event, the article is an amendment to the Home Rule Charter. And it was passed by the town meeting with our support. And one of the subsections of that article noted that the present situation then was that the only non-voter entity that could address the town meeting on an issue was our committee. What this subsection does is give the moderator discretion to, at the moderator's discretion, to allow other non-voting taxpayers to voice whatever they do. And you have to convince the moderator in advance, but that is passed. Home rule amendments need to be approved by the state attorney general. I've not followed up to see whether that one has been approved yet, but there is, you heard it here first, apparently. There may be an opportunity if you want to come up and address the town meeting on anything, including to shout at us. But I don't think shouting at us is going to be on the ATM article. But anyway, there'll be that opportunity.
I don't intend to shout at you.
Yeah.
I forgive my dunderheadedness if I'm the only one who is confused, but let me just ask, so I won't be confused anymore. Do you or do you not speak on behalf of the non-voting taxpayers of Nantucket?
Can I answer that question?
Don, go ahead.
Please, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Don.
We are a governmental entity. We are sworn in by the government. We raise our hands and we pledge allegiance to the town. And if you read the bylaws, we are an advisory committee. And the way we advise is we bring in experts to the meeting, the people who are in charge of the various places in town before we form any conclusion we might make. Most of it's very few times actually that we send formal recommendations. It's mostly listening. So we know more about the town. So if you want polling done, then it's going to the government itself and asking them to poll the non-voting taxpayers. Even in your organization, you have quite a mix of people. So it's not easy to tease out exactly what those things say. So you need an objective party to go around and do the polling, not people with any preconceived notions, but objective party. Well, that takes a certain amount of money and a certain amount of personnel. The most we have is 15 to cover the whole island. So it is not possible. We also take training in conflict of interest. We even have to take a fairly extensive test to pass, to become members of this group.
Yeah.
So, in doing polling, we have to be cognizant that there is no, because of our personal opinions, of being non-objective.
Yeah.
So we are a government entity. We are not like a community organization.
Right, but does this governmental entity?
Okay, let me just, again, I hate to interrupt you, but this is not exactly, we're not going to debate the existence of the ACNBT. We sent you the bylaws. Anybody can read them. But what I will say, just on the
Chairman, I
total
was
issue.
speaking,
Yeah.
and you interrupted me.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Don. Why don't you finish?
Thank you. So yes, it is in the bylaws, and there's nothing in there that we should be polling all non-voting taxpayers. In fact, I like a better term. We are second own homeowners. That's what we really are. Putting the tax part of it in there is, I don't think is relevant, because residency is determined by how long you live here, not by, what taxes you pay.
Good. Okay, so then the point that I was going to make is that if there is any need for polling on the issue of concern to you beyond whatever questions surveying you've done in Monomoy, it would seem to me that the short-term rental working group would figure that out and seek out the polling. We don't have a position one way or the other. If the short-term working rental group needs to know what all non-voting taxpayers think of whatever it is that they are going to propose to the select board, they can decide to poll on that issue. Because it's not this group or our recommendations that are going to make any decision. It's rather the working group that will make decisions about short-term rentals that will then be reviewed and either supported or changed by the select board. And then if a bylaw needs to be passed to enact this, it will be by the voters, not by the non-voters, that this will all happen. So I think what we are seeking to spend our time on is to understand what the working group is doing and to provide them the best advice we can to do it. And I think your advice is you think that a certain rule should be imposed on short-term rentals. That advice is going to be heard. And but it's right now, this is all premature because the working group is in formation.
Right,
Anyway.
right. I hope and believe and trust that you're right, that the work group being formed will have data-driven decision-making, including surveying and polls. You're right, that's where it should start. My comment about the survey, which by the way, we would be happy to share methodology. We've shared the survey, I think itself with you all. We would work with you. We incurred virtually no expense. It was volunteers who did our survey. That's how we did our survey. We didn't pay a bunch of money.
And I know all that, but let me tell you, I don't know in your litigation experience. I've done surveys and I've litigated surveys, and if you have a survey that you have to determine its reliability, and there's standard ways to do it. And I've always used professionals to do surveys, and then in court they've stood up. I think that the survey, if I have no view as to whether survey needs to be done on my attitude toward short-term rentals, it wouldn't be worth asking my attitude until you tell me what is the rule that you want to impose, and then I might have a reaction to it.
Okay.
But we don't have such a rule right now.
Peter, can I interject this? Our committee is appointed to represent the non-voting taxpayers, not to poll them. If the desire is to have a polling group, that needs to be set up by the town government, not us to arrogate that. We're appointed to represent a diversity of views on non-voting taxpayer interests, and that's what we indeed do. Surveying is a whole nother issue we should not be involved in.
then I respectfully submit, if you are appointed to represent the non-voting taxpayers, which you just said, Mr. Sherman, that you should not take public positions without meaningful input from the non-voting taxpayers you purport to represent.
On the same
We're here getting your input.
On the same principle, the Congress of the United States should not act as representing the people without polling on every issue that they take up. It's just not a proper issue for government to poll for every issue that comes before it. Thank you.
Okay, so Kathy?
I just wanted to add on to what's been said before. I mean, one of the things that I discovered in working in this group and in other things, because we do listen in to select board meetings and FinCom meetings and different planning board meetings to get educated on the issues before we think about what our positions are on it as individuals, and share that. I think if you've ever been to any of the meetings that the town government runs, this is town government, a town meeting form of government is really the most purely democratic government type of government that we have. And it's a very traditional government in New England. It's not really popular anywhere else. And it's very much individual oriented, meaning that if you want a voice, you show up. So if you go to the select board or you go to FinCom meetings, they are always open to public input, but not through any kind of a polling mechanism. All of the meetings in the town are open to the public, and one shows up and has an opportunity to share their opinions, their voice, how they feel. And that's exactly what we do. Our meetings are all open and they're all public, and you and anybody else shares your ideas with us, and then we can represent those. That's how it's done in a town meeting form of government. It's the same with town meeting. You have to show up to vote. There's no ballot voting on these kinds of legislative issues. So basically the entire public is a participatory nature. So it's a very difficult process in a town the size of Nantucket. But that's the way it works, whether we like it or not. That's the way it works.
It sounds to me like that's the squeaky wheel of Greece form of democracy, which I submit may not be the most perfect form. And I hear the great resistance to surveying or polling or seeing what the other non-voting taxpayers think. And I'm saddened by it. I hear you.
Okay, I hear you, but the opportunity you have in the minutes remaining is to give us your ideas about what you would like the rule to be on short-term rentals. You sent us some information, which I think is a first step, but it needs to be a full paragraph. And well, you're crowding, because what I'm saying is, what would the rule read, and understandable, enforceable rule that you think should be the rule on short-term rentals.
Well,
there apparently is one commercial rental in your area, and for some reason
there's more.
There's more. There's only one you've told us about so far, I think. Yeah.
Peter,
Yeah.
I have a good idea.
Yeah.
I think Franz Neely ought to take advantage of the opportunity being presented, because all of the short-term working group meetings are going to be public.
Mhm.
And you will be able, Franz, you'll be able to attend every single meeting. So instead of wasting your time berating us for not knowing what we're doing, attend those meetings, because we'll be attending, and we'll see if you're attending, and make your points to the committee that actually is going to be making the recommendations for the next warrant article, not us. We're not going to make the recommendation. We're one vote out of a bunch of others. But all the meetings of the short-term working group are public meetings. Brooke Moore keeps saying she wants transparency. The public can attend every meeting. That means you can attend it, and you can use that opportunity to tell them what you think. You're taking much too much of our time on this issue about this silly survey. Forget about it. We're not going to do it. Thank you.
Well, I guess that certainly answers that.
I hope so.
Yeah, and I think that
I hope so. And your comments at the beginning.
Okay, I'm going to rule everybody out of order now, because we need to return to our agenda.
Civility.
Yeah, I've actually asked Francie if she has some
I do.
language. You can send it to us, and we'd be happy to discuss at some point. But as Gary points out, it's this working group that probably would be the direct beneficiary of what your requests and suggestions are. Yeah, because and we might agree with them or disagree with them. It just depends on what they are. But right now, you know.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much, Mr. Holly. I will say that I have been looking at other municipalities' best practice. Their ordinances or regulations or bylaws pertaining to short-term rentals. I trust that the work group will do so. I hope that this group's representative to the work group will do so, because they help refine the definitions that you were asking about. That I trust will be the work of the work group. And I look forward to participating at some point in that ongoing dialogue. But I just want for Monomoy to be very clear about what our constituency opposes. For one, purely commercial short-term rentals, those properties, whatever the title owner is, you know, whether it's an individual or an LLC or a partnership or a corporation, whether on island or off island, that owns that property and is using it solely for short-term rental purposes. And yes, I identified one for this group last time we spoke. Since then, I've been told that there may be 2 others. But we'll see about that, because we get proof. We try to get data before we draw conclusions. And so we are doing that. And I will participate as we get more information and further refining the definitions, because I couldn't agree with you more, Mr. Hall. There are nuances to these things. You don't want to have regulations with unintended consequences. So I think that the work group, if it's well-intentioned, and I hope it will be, and if it's fair and balanced, then they will be addressing some of those things with hopefully input from the public. But I appreciate you've made very clear that this committee is not going to be interested in conducting any surveys, even though it does represent the non-voting taxpayers of the island. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. And
The concern
yeah.
of we don't represent the majority or all of the non-voting taxpayers. That is not who we are. If you have concerns, you join the committee. And there are vacancies.
Okay. Well, we've had a very fulsome discussion today about a variety of subjects, and I look forward to our next meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. All in favor? And there's a second I see. All in favor, raise your hand, say
I
aye.
have a question first. Is that
Yep.
okay? Just a quick question. I just went for the minutes. Did you say you were going to approach Brooke Moore for our next meeting, and then
Yes.
Alan Warden for the one after that?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'm trying to put them both in the same meeting.
Okay,
That's gonna be tight. That's tight.
thank you.
I don't think you should do
No, I don't think it's a good idea either. I
it.
think,
No.
I think I'd like to spend more, time
Okay.
with both of them.
Good.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Right up.
And the next meeting is Labor Day weekend, is that right?
And is it the first or
Third.
Saturday, I think.
the third?
Third.
Third, okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.